SEC Chair Gary Gensler also saying this week that many cryptocurrencies are securities and are being exchanged on crypto trading and lending platforms that need to register with the SEC. Gensler adding that he is very concerned about investor protection, as many crypto platforms do not afford users the same protections as many regulated entities like the New York Stock Exchange. Joining us now to discuss is Crypto.com Global Head of Growth, Henrik Johansson. Welcome to the show, Henrik. So Crypto.com has experienced explosive growth within the past 12 months, over 10 million users and 90 cryptocurrencies available on the platform. You could also grow your portfolio by earning up to 14% interest on your crypto assets, according to your website. Now, when you hear Gary Gensler addressing trading and lending platforms like Crypto.com as a cause for concern, what do you make of his comments?
Well, I think as with any new technology that has an enormous power to transform and to empower people, there will always be a lot of concern and a lot of questions in the beginning of the journey, lots of ups and downs. And given that I think the crypto space is still relatively early in its journey, just like streaming was maybe 8 years ago when I joined Spotify, I think this is to be expected to some extent.
So Henrik, how are you guys offering the rates that you do? We're looking now in the markets, and interest rates, for instance, have gone back down. We're seeing leverage lowering on the exchanges, which means the demand to borrow currencies has gone down. So where exactly are you getting that margin? And is it threatened by federal regulators and state regulators, such as what we're seeing with BlockFi?
I think that's a very good question. Now, me being relatively early in my journey with Crypto.com, I think I'll have to defer that question to maybe some of my colleagues who are a little bit more in on the ins and outs of the company at this point. My journey with Crypto.com started about a week ago, so I still have a lot of things to wrap my head around and to get myself sort of immersed in.
So if I understand correctly, your mission is global growth, which is a really interesting area because, right now we're seeing countries all over the world scrambling to figure out how to regulate the crypto industry. And we're seeing a lot of chaos in the United States in particular, with its infrastructure bill and trying to figure out crypto taxes. So I guess my question for you is twofold. One is, how concerned are you about the regulatory environment in the United States? And two, where do you see growth coming mostly from other countries in the world?
I think this is actually a very interesting question, because right now, what is really sort of holding back scale and reach, I think, within the community is scale and reach, meaning that what needs to happen next for growth to really take off is for growth to take off. So it sort of sounds like a catch-22, if you will, but I think what we need to look at now, and what I think a lot of our friends in the community and some of our competitors probably as well need to think about, is how do we expand the reach of the services? How do we get more people into the ecosystem, regardless of where they are in the world? Now, Crypto.com, obviously, I think one of the big reasons why I joined this company and why I'm so sort of bullish on its growth trajectory is trying to play very, very nicely in this space, and obviously has a very good relationship with the regulatory bodies. So we will continue to work very closely with those and make sure that we, when we launch products and when we launch markets and when we aggressively grow the reach of the service, we do so in a way that is compliant in any way possible.
So you worked at Spotify.com before this. What do you see as the similarities between what's going on in streaming music and crypto, other than the fact that Napster's gone, and Napster was essentially Bitcoin before there was Bitcoin when it came to file sharing?
Great question. Now, I would say that the largest similarities between streaming and crypto is actually a bit of a time lag here. Again, sort of going back to the slightly more nascent days back in the early 2010s and so on, there were a lot of concerns, obviously, about streaming as well. Is it going to be good? Is it going to, if I get rid of my CDs, what happens next? So lots of confusion and concern, both on the consumer side and also on the provider side. Now, obviously, that's not the case anymore. Streaming has become pretty much the default way of accessing music in many, many countries and regions around the world. And this has been sort of a result of changing consumer preference and behavior, and therefore changes on the industry side. I believe crypto and cryptocurrencies and other blockchain technologies are on a very similar journey, though obviously a little bit further behind. So I would say the similarities are maybe not so much on where streaming sits today, but rather on where it was a few years back.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, with Crypto.com, you've been on a hiring spree, and now you have 1,500 employees. You've set a target of taking Crypto.com to 100 million plus users in 2 years. How do you plan to do that? And piggybacking off of Emily's questions, where do you see that global growth?
So first of all, I think it's important to remember that the entire ecosystem is now expanding very rapidly. And as I think you probably have already seen in the recent research report from Crypto.com, the size of the crypto community actually doubled in just 4 months recently. So there is already explosive growth happening, and it's actually quite spread out across the globe, I would say. But I think even more important is for all of us, Crypto.com included, to achieve these very ambitious goals, is that we need to grow the category overall. So we need to get more people into the ecosystem overall and actually learn more about cryptocurrencies, understand what they are, how they are beneficial to you, and how they can empower you, and so on. So I think this growth mission is not just about acquiring lots of users into the Crypto.com ecosystem, but also about growing the sector, growing the industry overall.
Any one geography that any geographical area that you see the most growth coming from?
It's a good question. I think it's actually quite spread out at this point in time. Obviously, there's been a lot of growth in North America territories recently. But one thing that we are quite keenly looking at is how do we balance our growth across all of the regions. So I wouldn't say that I want to point out one specific region and say that this is right here, we see explosive growth right now. But rather the question is really, how do we get all of these regions to actually rise together over the coming 24 months?
And finally, what made you decide to make the jump from streaming to cryptocurrencies, fintech?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Well, I think it's kind of similar to what made me join Spotify actually about 8 years ago, which is this idea that you're seeing something that is very, very powerful, that has the potential to really drive positive impact for a lot of people. It's a technological breakthrough that I think is meaningful to lots of people around the world at a very sort of in a deep and meaningful way. And it's kind of the same thing that I saw in the music industry 8-9 years ago. You see this fantastic technology, but it needs to scale, it needs to reach out there in order to actually drive changes in behavior, which will then impact the industry. And I think everyone can agree that more access to more music is very good for a lot of people. It spreads messages and ideas and so on. And similarly, I believe that cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology has the power to really be a force of good for a lot of people. So getting a chance to be part of that journey and actually play a role in it is, to me, very, very exciting.